I've always wanted to be a friend of God, the kind of friend that Abraham was, the kind of friend that God communicated with all the time. But I never felt that kind of spiritual connection between me and God, like that sort of friendship connection. And I really thought that I could just connect with God through reading the Word, the Bible, just understanding everything I could, trying to dig in between the words, debate atheists, just think, just understand everything on a deep level. But now I'm not sure that's how much it works anymore. It kind of feels like I was shelving God, shelving the true power He had, because there's an entire other side to God that I was kind of stonewalling. You know, the Word is God, but the Word also breathes, and I wasn't seeing that. You know, sometimes you might hear about testimonies that sound unbelievable. Like you might hear, there's this one movie like Heaven is for Real, the story of like this kid going to heaven, seeing Jesus, and then coming back. That sounds insane, and probably not scientifically accurate. But what makes you say that it didn't happen? I was listening to this podcast, and the guy was saying that Christians or religious people of any kind of caliber might not reach like the highest level of intellectualism because they believe in so-called myths. And Christians who do reach a certain level of intellectual maturity, they might take the story of Noah, for example, as, oh, they didn't actually take two animals of every single kind on the ark. It must be some sort of metaphor for a thing about the other thing, about God, that happened. But the Bible is a historical recount. So are we saying that the Bible is lying to us? Is that really the kind of faith that the Bible calls us to have? The kind of faith where you touch the garment and you're healed, and you travel all the way to see Jesus just so that your daughter is healed? Is that the same kind of faith, saying that it's a metaphor? You know, I was at a worship service, as one does at a young adults meeting, and there were people worshiping all around me. The music was loud. People were singing at the top of their throats. A lot of people were crying. And it reminded me of when I was at a workshop, a writing workshop for music. And the writers there told us that they make this music simple on purpose. There's a reason why the worship songs are not very catchy. Well, they are catchy sometimes, but it's so that any person, even if they have zero music background, can just sing along and worship. That's also why they make the music really loud, so that no one hears people's terrible voices. But why is that so important that people worship, that people sing, that people just fall before God? You know, there are people all around me bowing down onto the ground, their cheek to the, like, who knows what has touched that floor. It's a posture of surrender, and it's a true part of worship. You know, being stiff and knowledgeable, trying to understand all of these words, all of this phrases, meanings, revelations, it kind of reminded me of the Pharisees, where they were all talk, but no life in their lives, just putting other people down, kind of prideful themselves. I was reading 1 Corinthians, and it says, "We all possess knowledge," this is chapter 8, "but knowledge puffs up, while love builds up. Those who think they know something do not yet know what they ought to know. But whoever loves God is known by God." And I think what that really means is that when you have all this knowledge, you become prideful, like you know everything. But that verse kind of calls us out, saying, like, do you actually know everything? And it kind of thinks like, are you really so smart that you can interpret the Bible perfectly? I mean, that's why there's so many divisions in Christianity, right? All of this like historical conflicts, the church splitting up, all these different denominations. It's all different interpretations of the Bible. Well, most of them. But are you really the one to come after 2,000 years and say, oh, this is the correct thing to say? You know, this, the way I read it, the way it applies to my life, like, yeah, of course, that's how everyone should apply it. That's exactly what the Bible was talking about. I think that it's prideful to say that. And it's not without the Holy Spirit that you can truly understand what's happening in the Bible. And I think if you do have the Holy Spirit, you'll be led even greater than on your own. I mean, the whole point of Christianity is not to walk this this walk alone, right? To have God on your shoulder. Without the Holy Spirit, how can you interpret what's going on in the Bible? When you do have the Holy Spirit, your intuition, I think, gets multiplied to a heavenly perfect level. You know, a pastor told me once that if you have, sorry, he had a weird voice, but he said, if you have spirit but no word, you blow up. It's uncontrolled power. If you have the word but no spirit, you dry up. There's no power. But if you have the word and the spirit, you grow up. You mature. So how do we do this? How can we mature? How can we give up this like idol, honestly, of intellectualism? I think we must pray. Just ask God to forgive us, of course, but just to fill us up. But even more than prayer, we have to surrender our walls. Complete surrender. It's a kind of surrender that it's mental, yes. It's physical. Just like how those people at Gateway were just kneeling down on the ground. It's an understanding in yourself that you don't have within you every understanding. And you don't even have the capability after 10,000 years to understand everything. But just to let the Holy Spirit come into you, to surrender your walls. For me, those walls were intellectualism. And the way I broke it down, in the way that I became, or I think I'm becoming, a step closer to becoming God's friend, a step closer to becoming closer to God himself, is to just get on my knees and pray.